corporate space. And because mental health has become a huge part of the conversation in today's day and age, could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me over, and thank you, Maithili ma'am, for thinking about me. If I can request everybody to please give a huge round of applause to Maithili ma'am. She was my teacher when I was in college, and I know that she did use psychology to control students like us. So I think you have a good expert in the audience. Thank you, ma'am, for thinking about me. Look, today I'm representing an organization called the Great Place to Work. We hold the world's largest market share in about 170 countries across the world in the area of workplace certification. Right? Last year was our largest study year, where we covered about 2,000 organizations across India, which totals to about 50 lakh or 5 million employees. So whatever I'm going to share is going to be an outcome of the data and research that we have. I think the issue of mental health has certainly come to the fore. It was always there, but I think COVID somewhere accelerated it. One. Two, I think we're seeing a lot of intergenerational conflict in the workplace today. And that is also giving rise to a lot of these needs. So you have for today's, if you talk about the Indian workforce, about 70% of the workforce are millennials, and then if you add Gen Z, it becomes 90%. Yeah. And they behave, aspire very differently than a Gen X. So today you're having leaders or the C-suite from a different generations. The younger workforce and the Gen Alpha, which is about to enter the workforce, they talk in English, believe me. They talk in English, but I don't think we can understand what they're speaking. And a large part of my job involves talking to them. And how is the music, Bob? Come, let's have a conversation. Are you sure it's it's no caps? And and I'm like going to the side, looking at my Google and Googling and wondering what they say. So we have become a hyper-connected world thanks to technology, and that's good. Today careers are global. Entrepreneurs are now aspiring globally, but along with it comes complexity. So definitely COVID has kind of pivoted this dialogue, and one of the main reasons is we used to go to work. There used to be boundaries. I used to get stressed at work. I would shut my laptop down. I'll take a walk. I'll go home. Now work has come home, right? And for certain genders and for certain socio-economic classes, it's become very, very difficult. And that has given rise. So space. I think in Bangalore we're still very, very lucky that we have the kind of space. I'm coming from Bombay. Bombay, the term if you call for a house is you're living in a matchbox. And then you put in confidentiality issues saying you can't talk about this client. So the husband and wife are wanting to sit in separate rooms. Escalations happen. The other ways also happen. A lot of wives, they write to us to say, my husband actually doesn't do anything. With COVID, I realized that he's just on the laptop saying hello, hello, and he says I'm on mute. So we're getting all kinds of things. And the short point that I'm trying to make is that everything has become exaggerated. Yes. Right? So technology has exaggerated it. Hybrid work environments has exaggerated it. Expectations and aspirations of the younger workforce, because they are comparing their lives to everything that's happening on social media. So there is no doubt that the issue of mental health is a serious issue, and a lot of the employers are taking very, very concrete steps to address this. For us, especially in a global organization like us, we've changed terminologies. We're now saying immediate near-term effect. Because I think the tolerance for long-term, the variables have become so volatile that it's anybody's guess. So 5 years ago to now, it's a different world. So it will be an apples to orange comparison. But post-pandemic, it's been 3 years. So if I take that timeline, what has certainly come to the fore are very concrete steps that the corporate is taking towards well-being. So for example, there is counseling which is being offered to employees. In my own organization, we offer it, as a free of cost. I think you don't have to pay anything. We do that, and now post-pandemic, we've extended it to the family also, because we've realized work has gone home. So it's unfair for us to be, individual based. So a lot of perks and benefits are now becoming community based rather than an individual employee based. Second is sick leaves. In my own organization, we have unlimited sick leaves, no questions asked. So, there's no policy to say you can fall sick for 10 days in a year. I mean, who knows, right? So, my organization is one of the many. So if you look at insurance itself has started to include mental health, right? So there is a huge policy step ahead. So I don't think all is lost. And also if you look at the corporate world, the concept of careers has now shifted to a gig economy. So that is the contradictions, and if there is time, I would want all of you students to kind of really talk about the contradictions. There is one very leftist view, if I may say so, saying everything has to be done by the corporate. We are for-profit organizations. If I don't make a profit this financial year, next year I won't be able to give salary increments. It's as simple as that, right? So we have to be very, very committed to holistic development, not just profit maximization, but let's not forget that we're a for-profit organization, right? So market share growth and doing it in a responsible, purposeful manner. So I call it compassionate capitalism. That has come in, right? So, but if you're looking at a workforce that, for example, comes to me and says, I want to change my job because I have finished 1 year in this organization and I think I'm going to get outdated if I'm going to continue in this organization. Or if I find profiles and resumes of somebody changing their jobs every 2 years, meaning that there is a problem that came, they couldn't manage the problem. So so my biggest worry is, where is the next generation of leaders with character? Character is built when you have dilemmas, when you face conflicts, when you stick to your ground, when you have a strong value system. Somewhere, mental well-being, counseling, these run a risk of being fashionable terms, and somewhere is giving employees an escape mechanism to not hold themselves accountable to change. So there are two sides of the coin. But coming back to corporate practices, whether it is leave, whether it's counseling, whether it is getting the family involved, rolling out policies for education, all of that. I think the leadership today is looking at an employee not as an individual, but as a community. And there are a lot of good practices emerging. And some work needs to be done by the employees as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes. The change that I see is, today almost all the organizations, all the corporates, they have something called as EAP, Employee Assistance Program, which I did not see many years ago. So the, corporate, they have their own limits. As she said, the employees also have to, cooperate. So they are doing their best to, give these facilities to the employees. But it is up to the person to take it up, to use the facility. Earlier, awareness about the EAP itself was not there in the organizations, but now after the pandemic, they have found that, oh, okay, I can access this, I can make use of this. They're slightly open to, taking or making use of this facility for their own benefit. But awareness being very, very low, they don't seem to realize that, they do need it. The stigma is still there, yeah. So just because they are corporate employees, I will never say that the stigma is not there. Stigma is very much there. They don't want anybody to know that they have made use of these EAP services. And so it's very tough. It's a very tough situation there. I would only say that maybe 0.1% of people are open and aware that yes, we need intervention when it comes to mental illness or mental well-being, and that it is something that we need to work on. Mental well-being is not the absence of illness, rather it is something completely different, and I need to put in an effort, I need to work to be mentally healthy. So that awareness is not there. Add to it their workload, the way of functioning, the diversity and work overload, and of course work from home. All this adds to their stress levels. Stress levels are very, very high, and they tend to show burnout at a very early age. So a lot of changes, yes.
Definitely, ma'am. I think that's both of you brought a very valid point. I think there are absolutely two sides to this entire conversation. It's not just the employee perspective or the organizational perspective that we have as well. Yeah. Coming to taking on the other perspective over here, what are some of the gaps that you all have seen in the space of psychology coming into the workplace, so to speak? And here I would like both of you to highlight this from the perspective of the organizations as well as the perspective of the psychologists or professionals as well. Saying that what are these gaps and what can we do as companies as well as professionals to sort of try to bridge this gap in the best possible ways. Sounds great. So ma'am was saying that ma'am will take on the perspective. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the organization, so we'll talk about psychology. Look, from the organization standpoint, I agree with her. There is stigma. And every day we get such powerful stories, whether it's the LGBTQ conversation, whether it's acceptance, the fact that just a couple of months ago, the mother was literally crying because, we all live in a society, and I think even if the parents wants to encourage the child, it's somehow the neighbors and the relatives that make it complex. And she was crying to say that when I realized that my son, and son at that time is now gay, they said its future is over, and for him to get a job, for him to get promoted, we were celebrating promotion, but a promotion in this case was so much more than a promotion. It was a positive stroke, right? So if you look at mental well-being, it's an ocean, and my honest submission is, please don't attempt to boil the ocean. It simply will not take you anywhere. So from an organization standpoint, I think it becomes very important for us to define a few objectives and then get a laser sharp focus to do everything in your capacity and commit to it. So for us, if it is mental well-being, there is counseling, there is EAP that she's spoken about, there is role modeling of the leader. I mean, as a CEO, I have to be comfortable with issues. I have to show vulnerability. I have to role model authenticity. I can't keep running away or hiding behind these and make this external. So somewhere I think within organizations, the leaders have to commit, and once the commitment is visible and you see there is serious commitment to make this happen, and it's just not some policies in some handbook, I think things move. Also, organizations, in my last point, my organizations are a microcosm of the society, and that's the dichotomy or the contradiction. You walk into a workplace, suddenly you want everybody to be fair, suddenly you want everybody to be equal, you want promotions to be, I mean, who are the people in your organizations? They're not Martians, they're not aliens. I mean, so any organization will but reflect the societal multi-layers, right? So organizations are no different. Just because we have bean bags and we take coffee latte or whatever you call it. And that's the other thing, in the name of workplace culture, the food courts become good.
Yes.
But I don't know whether that's real culture, right? So I think I think it is a movement. The way I look at it is, I'm an optimist. The Indian workforce has never been as intergenerational as it is today. We are becoming a melting pot. Whether it is women, whether it is other it is seriously a melting pot. It's very, very exciting for us to have these kind of experiments. And there is serious, we put the money where our mouth is. Today the organizations are not hiding behind. We're committed to that. So I think give another 2 to 3 years, we should have seen sufficient movement. But we have to take the society along. We can't operate otherwise.
Right. So let me speak from the psychologist's point of view and what we can do to bridge the gaps. We talk so much about stigma, right? Right from the morning we have been talking about stigma. But let me ask all the psychologists here, I'm sure all the students are studying psychology, right? What are we doing to remove the stigma? Each one of us. Tell me. Do we take it out to the society to say what psychology exactly is? See, the moment you say I'm studying psychology, what do the others say? Oh, I'm sure all of you have had this response, right? What have you done to change it? Have you done anything? And then we keep saying there's a stigma. I think it is our basic responsibility to take the stigma out. Come on openly about what exactly psychology is. Dealing with mental illness is just a small part of it. What about the other part of psychology which talks about well-being, which talks about positive psychology? There is so much to psychology apart, besides from mental illness. But
have you all had any experiences where you all have seen corporate psychology or the entire space of psychology in the workspace helping someone beyond the workspace? Because a lot of what is defined or known as corporate psychology is, oh, I get counseled at work or I get to speak to someone and that sort of thing. But have you all had any experiences or any examples you could share where it's gone beyond the workspace and has impacted their lives in a different way?
Oh yeah, like so many, so many. I think I take a lens of a woman for this, because I think it's a well-known, accepted fact that the career aspirations and the body clock are always in contradiction with each other, right? And today the corporate has stepped forward, whether it is maternity leave, whether it's postpartum depression, we talk about even giving leaves for people who want to adopt children, not necessarily have natural bonds, etc. But I think if you take the journey of a woman through the corporate ladder, when they touch, their late 40s, mid 50s, when they're peaking their career, women are also primary caregivers of their family. So there is a contradiction there as well. My in-laws are getting old, my parents are getting old, I need to be there to take care of them. So when you talk about mental well-being, I think just that term probably has no legs. You need to structure it, right? Mental well-being for women, mental well-being for historically excluded groups of society, mental well-being for, underserved communities, etc. It needs to have legs for it to be a little more meaningful. And when you start attaching legs to this story, then so many, right? So women have actually, so I call it a sisterhood, right? They've literally come forward and stepped in and started mentoring, others. There is also generational, so there is reverse mentoring happening where a lot of youngsters in their 20s are sitting down with 50-year-olds, teaching them technology, teaching them all of that. There are so many organizations which now give paid leave for CSR and community work. So the policies are a lot, and these have multiplier effects. And I think role models are many. If you talk about generation of job opportunities, right now in the corporate world, there is serious commitment towards neurodiversity. Now, who's talking about mental well-being for the neurodiversity workforce? So I think somewhere the dialogue about mental being also needs to step up to some of the changing trends and the way the workforce is changing within the corporate. We're becoming gig, we're becoming global, we're becoming intergenerational, and we're going to have quite a serious committed percentage of our workforce from the neurodiverse bit. And I think the dialogue really needs to get updated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes, see, just to continue with what Yashaswini was saying, today it's a globalized place. When you say it's a corporate, it's a mini world in itself. People of all countries and people from all over India. India itself has a very diverse culture. And it becomes very extremely difficult for each person to accept so many different people from different cultures as part of their team and work alongside. So it becomes, difficult in their life. So it's not just about corporate, it is life itself, because they really don't know how to adapt, how to adjust, how to change, how to modify. And so this could lead to a lot of conflicts. For example, recently, I think just 4 days back, I conducted this workshop on cross-cultural communication skills. Okay, so that's so important. So it's not about language, but it is more about understanding and respecting the diversity and differences, and then seeing how I can understand it and then work alongside these people. Now, it's not, I will not say it is restricted to the corporates alone. Now, if you look at the student community in any college, they are also from all over India. And so here I would like to tell the students something. Please, enjoy the differences, learn from the different cultures. Don't let differences divide you, because I see students discriminating. For example, each one of us comes from a different state, and India, all of us have different mother tongues. And for none of us, English is not a mother tongue for any of us, right? It's a foreign language at the end of it all. But then I find students discriminating on the basis of accent, saying, oh, look at her accent, or look at his accent, or he doesn't know to speak English well, or look at, what poor English she has. Let's not discriminate. We're learning English, we're communicating in English, very good. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how am I learning from the other person? What am I learning from the other person? So this diversity is something which we need to leverage upon and not create differences. So you please start in college itself, because tomorrow in your workplace you're going to have a globalized workplace, and it's definitely going to help you adapt, because in the workplace today, diversity is something which is very difficult for them to adapt. And somebody coming from a very remote village, let's say in North India, is suddenly thrown to work with somebody who is maybe coming from Australia. And they work together as a team. So it becomes extremely difficult to to even collaborate, to even think similarly, because each one, the culture affects the way we think. And so, right from this stage, my sincere advice to all the youngsters would be, please do not discriminate on the basis of differences in culture or language or community. Learn to leverage the differences and learn from each other's diversity, because that's what is going to help you in the long run. So, this is what I have noticed because of globalization. This difficulty is very high.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
For psychology, is there a gender bias? Because I see most of them as girls. I mean, is it like a normal thing?
Yeah,
that is
gender
there in
bias.
psychology, yes.
And how many of you in the audience are below 25?
A lot of them are students.
Undergraduates, 20. Oh gosh.
Okay. My last question.
We're like dinosaurs.
I felt the same way when I walked in today. Someone asked me when I graduated. I did not want to tell them.
Why not? Why
Why
to be, I
not?
think,
Why
proud
not?
of our age. I could be the age of their grandmother.
See, the advantage of women is we don't age after 20.
And that's the philosophy I'm going to follow. One last question for both of you, and then we'll open up the questions
I'm
from
very
the audience.
interested for the question.
What do you think is the future of corporate psychology? What do you see how corporate psychology is going to evolve as time goes by?
I think when you say corporate psychology, it's, businesses work on psychology. So business strategy itself has psychology, because when you're trying to do competitor analysis, etc., you do how is your competition behaving, how will your competition react, what is consumer behavior. So I think business itself is a canvas of psychology, but I think your question is more from employee and workforce, and your question was how is it going to evolve. I think it's going to evolve. It is going to get a lot more murkier, because I don't see a lot of people taking accountability for their own self-development. And like I keep saying, you will fail. All your decisions is not going to end up being the right decisions, right? And you will become successful. And I have seen this now enough number of times that you will become successful after you fail. Failure leads to success, but excuses don't lead to success. If you start justifying and if you start giving yourself an excuse for X, Y, Z things, I did not get promoted because, and once you start justifying and you start creating an excuse, I think it's a negative spiral. So somewhere a high degree of self-awareness, biting the bullet, every conversation is not going to be an easy one. There will be some difficult conversations, but we will have to start accepting ourselves. The moment we start externalizing, I think we've kind of lost the race. So the way I see it, I think we still have a long way to go. But what's the silver lining is that there are some serious budgets that the corporates are actually keeping aside for employee well-being. So interesting times.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, I would like to second what she said. As far as growth of corporate psychology is concerned, I can only see a huge growth. It's not only for corporate psychology, but for psychology per se. Psychology itself is, is now being recognized, being accepted. I'm not very happy about that. Definitely not. In fact, today morning when they said that in the primary healthcare center, earlier they used to have 0 or 1 people coming in, and now they're having lakhs. That's not a good state. That's not a good positive state of affairs at all. But because of that, definitely, yes, psychology, corporate psychology has great scope. Because, as it was said in the morning, father, mother and a son, today is a joint family. And because of this, children are growing up in a very different environment. Society is changing so fast. And today we talk about the new normal. So there's a lot of things that we need to adapt, that we need to adjust to, right? And because of this, it's definitely going to put a lot of pressure, a lot of stress on each individual. And so when you go to the workplace, there's going to be additional stress, there's going to be additional responsibility, there's going to be additional workload, and who better to help you than a psychologist? Okay, so when it comes to that, when it comes to work-life balance, if you want to talk about stress management, time management, there's so much that we psychologists can offer to the world, offer to the society, offer to each and every one on this planet. So please let us take the responsibility of doing that sincerely and with commitment, because psychology is definitely coming up. And in colleges, if you look at the admission list, the seats are full. There are 130 students in a class, and the list of waiting list students who want to do psychology. So please don't do psychology for fashion. Now I think it's become a fashion. Earlier, engineering was a fashion. Then commerce and MBA was the fashion. Now it looks like psychology is the fashion. Please, do not do psychology for fashion. Do it with sincerity and commitment, because this is one place where you can help every individual in this society.
And we recently came across a test which says if personal accomplishment is high, a person can be deemed that they're not really having burnout in their work. So there are three segments: emotions, depersonalization, and personal accomplishment. And the test says that if personal accomplishment is high, the person is probably not facing burnout. But I feel like this is a very contradictory statement, because a person could be having personal accomplishments because they might be an overachiever. I wanted to know your perspective on this.
Yeah, no, my life is an example of that. Right? So you're absolutely right. I think achievement is no way saying that you're leading a life without stress. In fact, I don't know, you guys might have heard about it. Dr. Pestonji, he's such a authority figure, and he's done studies about stress. And what's very interesting about India, and I spend a lot of time with him in Ahmedabad understanding organization psychology, and he's done a study which was very interesting. He said that in other developed economies, once you hit a certain economic threshold of success, of personal achievement, whatever be it, right, the stress levels were lower. Whereas in India, the moment an individual becomes highly successful or crosses a certain economic threshold, the stress levels actually increase. Because the society, we've still not metamorphosed ourselves into a capitalistic economy. So, so there are a lot of contradictions that I've had with CEOs who are earning a lot of money, but then the society expects them to behave like a socialist, but work like a capitalist. So somewhere I think the cultural context of the country does come in, and I'm agreeing with you that I don't think it's binary anyway.
Good afternoon all. Okay, so actually I'm not a student. I'm actually 20 years of experience in the HR. Currently I'm working with Mahindra in based in Madikeri. So you are talking about corporate. So I've actually worked in corporates, I worked at MNCs. I've also worked in the hotel industry. So in our hotel industry, especially I'm currently working in Madikeri. So my team over there, I'm the L&D manager. So my team over there works for 20, they work literally every day. They work for 13, 14 hours. So it's like every day it's like, so I want to do something for the mental health. So I started small, but I wanted some more insights as to how can I develop their mental health, because that is much needed in our resorts. In fact, across we have 125 plus resorts in the country, as you all know. So corporate of course is doing it, but it's at the corporate level. The resort level is totally different. So if you can give me some insights on that, it will be very. I just started actually. I registered student because I just started last year, and I'm doing a psychology honors through IGNOU. So yeah.
So no, I think you should sit and have a personal chat with Yashaswini, because this is not something which can be answered just like that. I think you should be the right person and she'll tell you how you can go about it. I think you should do that.
In Mahindra you have the GEM Awards, right?
We do have a lot of awards, yes.
I think she's talking about Club Mahindra.
Yeah, I'm talking about Mahindra.
We did a study mission, I think, in Goa.
Yes, I'm talking about Club Mahindra.
Yeah. Sure, we'll have a meeting with your CEO. That's no problem.
So more than, because Club Mahindra corporate is okay, because last month I gone to the corporate, so that was a good vibe and all. So they leave on time, they come on time and all, okay. Resorts is not like that at all. So I personally also have I work for 12 hours. So so
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Alright, thank you so much both of you for being here. It was really nice to gain your insights, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot. I would now request Ms. Priya.
I think future belongs to them actually.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, just a statement, ma'am. Have you ever seen a lecturer who loves her students so much? And let me tell you, we go back more than 20 years, and I used to bunk classes. I used to hardly be in classes, but my return on being indisciplined, you know, you need to have a quid pro quo, was that I always used to win prizes for the college, so they used to allow me to bunk. You know, yeah, but you know, it's because of them. So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Just a quick couple of sentences. For me, I've always felt being very blessed in this, I do not want to call it profession, but being in the space of education, you know, being able to have this opportunity to have students like Yashaswini, Priyanka, I mean, that's my take home, you know, that's what I take home with me. I may not have a CEO's package or, you know, my well-being and mental well-being is, you know, having a blast with the kids, you know, dancing with them and they dance and, you know, and पिटाई भी करना है, वो भी करना है, वो मैंने कभी छोड़ा नहीं है, but I have enjoyed each and every moment of my life with the students. And so it has, this mental thing and all was never with me. In fact, students thought I was mental most of the time. But thank you so much, and my best wishes to Priyanka. I'm really so proud of her, and this is a great way in which she has associated me with her. And of course, Yashaswini, she is right. She was a very bad student when she was in Bachelor's of Business Management. She had a very, the family comes from a very, you know, it's a good background. A very excellent Bharatanatyam dancer, but I used to have issues because she would be rarely in the class or submitting assignments. But today, I mean, it's mind-blowing. What she's doing, you can Google her and see as a top entrepreneur in the world. You know, she's counted in the top 100 entrepreneurs of the world. I'm no. So, thank you so much.